Hey guys, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the differences between FE and FI that I'm seeing. And if I get into it enough, I want to talk about the differences between FI and TI as well. So something that I've been really noticing recently is that FI users really deeply relate to people, like so intensely. Especially if they're like empaths and which is pretty common, especially like with NFPs. And I was wondering, okay, like, why is everyone saying that they're an FE user? Like, because a lot of FI users I know say these kind of things, and people are like, are you sure that's not FE? And some FI users are saying, like, yeah, I connect with people a lot. I feel people's pain. I care about other people. Isn't that FE? And I think it's kind of sad that the assumption is that like FI is selfish or FE cares about others, because that is absolutely not true. Not at all. And that's really not doing FI justice, because there's so much there, and it's really unfortunate to me that FI users don't know how to see the function of themselves all the time as something super valuable, because you're capable, like an FI user is capable of arriving at the same place essentially that an FE user would. They just go a different route to get there. And I'm gonna quote Joyce Meng here. She has been talking with me about her insights into the functions, and this was really amazing and really got me thinking. So shout out to Joyce. She said that FE users and FI users can both arrive at the same place. An FI user can arrive at a place of emotional connection with other people, but that isn't where they start. That's not their assumption, not their base. They're moving into that from a different room. And I think that's totally true, because I think that FI users, they start off with this knowledge of the intricacies and subjectivity of emotion, and so when they connect with another person, it's not just like, oh, you're a person, you exist, I'm gonna connect with you, da da da. Like, it's not that simple and basic like it would be with FE. It's, I am a person, you are a person, I have my own feelings, you have your own feelings, and then they can make the assumption of, if this person is displaying this mood or something, well, what's in them? What inspires that? They look at these emotional premises and, like, what would it be like to be in the other person's shoes? And I'm not saying that only FI users can do this, because anyone can, but there's a specific way and depth that this happens in an FI user that is very particular to their function. And I don't think I can fully articulate it here, but that's what I'm getting at. So yeah, they connect with people more by stepping into their shoes, I would say. And they arrive at a place of connection and understanding their place in a community, understanding people's relationships with each other. But it comes with this depth to it that isn't just like an assumption. It's a conclusion that they arrive at with time. And FE users don't do that as much. So something that an FI user said recently was that, you know, if they're around someone who they really care about and love who is depressed, they're going to take that on as their own. It's going to really hurt them, and that can be really hard. And that kind of deep empathy can totally happen by stepping into someone's shoes that way. And it was interesting because I also relate to, if, you know, I'm in a room with other people, if I'm in the environment with other people who are depressed, it's very intense, and I will start to feel that depression myself. And I think some of this is part of being like maybe like an empath, highly sensitive person or something, how susceptible we are to being influenced by our emotional environment, and that can be the case regardless of what function we use. But the function that we have determines how we conceptualize what just happened, and what action we take, what movement we do, where we go when we have those feelings of intense sensitivity. So yeah, for me, I'll definitely also, if I'm around people who are depressed, for instance, I will definitely feel it because, not because I'm necessarily stepping into their shoes, which is the interesting thing. Because I think FI users will step into somebody's shoes, and it's not the physical presence. I mean, FI users, totally correct me if I'm wrong and if I'm misrepresenting in any way, but it's not the physical presence of the person's feelings that makes you feel that, because when you go home, after seeing someone who is depressed, you might still have that lingering in you because you're processing the entirety of what it would be like to be in that person's shoes. And I've heard before that introverted feeling is, it's sort of, in a sense, outside of time. It's not bound by circumstances. It sort of goes beyond that. And so, those feelings and their roots will extend, even when you're not in the physical presence of someone with that feeling. And for me, though, it's a bit different. I definitely experience, feeling the feelings of other people when I'm around them, but it's more, I'm always, inside of the emotional environment that I'm in, because I have dominant extroverted feeling. It's sort of my entire world, in a sense, the emotional environment that I'm within. And so, if everyone around me is really sad and depressed, then, wherever I look, it's there, and I can't ignore it, and it's sad, and it weighs me down because of that. And my response to that is maybe unlike the FI user. I feel like the FI user's response might be to really look into that and accept the beauty and embrace it, or I think ideally that would be it. That'd be a very cool, mature FI response, is to really dig into that and look at the beauty within that deep understanding. They're not afraid of negativity as much. They just want genuine emotion, maybe whatever that is, and they're less discriminatory against the ones that seem negative. But for me, it's tricky because I just get sad. I don't want to explore the depth. I want to see, well, what can we do? If I'm here, how can we be happier? How can I be happier and make people happier? And just because it's not compelling for me to go into those depths, because I don't necessarily gain something from it by just appreciating it for what it is. And I think that's maybe because I'm lacking extroverted thinking, in a sense. I'm not really sure how that works, but I believe it's probably an FE versus FI difference. And FI users, I think, are so much better at just accepting the situation as it is and appreciating it for what it is, and that is beautiful. However, I don't think that my brain works that way, and I think that's a key difference. Where I look at that information and I'm just trying to redirect everything to be more positive. If my family is sad or something, I really want to see, well, how can we make the most of this? I don't want to waste time feeling sad, because for me there's no benefit in it personally, as much. And I just really I feel feeling all of that sadness and depression motivates me to want to do everything in my power for everyone to feel better, knowing that it's I'm looking at this information and I want to change that. I don't want to necessarily respect that for what it is. I hope to make it better. And I really hope that doesn't sound too disrespectful to people with FI, because I absolutely appreciate the validity of what you would be doing with absolutely respecting feelings, and I think that's beautiful, and that has a place. But I also think that FE has a place and a role, and I guess that's what I'm that's, I guess, my role, and I think that's why I feel these things, but not that the other perspective is wrong, just that it doesn't necessarily apply to me as much. So I think basically at the end of the day, we can both have intense empathy. We can both have a lot of deep pain and perceive that and be affected deeply in our own souls. But then how do we respond to that and process that is going to be different. So I just wanted to say that about how different feelers can be affected by their moods and really where that difference is. And I think it's also really tricky because I don't think my description will ever do this justice, because all this stuff is way beyond however we could define it, and there's always exceptions, but I think that this the core of it holds even when the behavior doesn't. So totally take this all like with a grain of salt, but that's sort of my perspective on that. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about TI and FI, and how they differ from TE and FE in the way that FI and TI are about premises far more than the conclusion, and so there's a lot more endurance in swimming in a premise, while FE and TE are more looking at the conclusion that can be applied somewhere. So I think that for introverted thinking, I'm going to start with introverted thinking because I'm very familiar with it, I guess, is very focused on like not does this work, not what is the conclusion of this, but why is this true? Not is it true just on its own. Like, we want to know, like, what holds the truth up? What is it based in? Where is it rooted? So that we can have a sense of conviction. And there's a lot less action associated with TI itself. It's a lot about, like, philosophizing and just pondering and sifting in our minds. And I notice that when I talk to TE users, they get very frustrated by my sort of dwelling in, I wonder why, and they're like, well, it's this. Do you want me to explain it to you differently? Do you want me, they want me to get the message, to be on the same page as them, because TE is focused on a logical conclusion, while TI is focused on those premises. And so I would say you could parallel FI and FE, because, like, for me with extroverted feeling, I'm kind of like, that's why you feel the way you feel. Cool. Like, I don't really know. I don't want to, like, necessarily just explore that because it seems difficult and unable to be sifted through, and I just want to know, like, how do we feel as good as possible, taking that into account. Almost looking at the emotional conclusions. And as much as I do absolutely appreciate the introverted feeling depth of looking at the emotional premises, like, what specifically is going on to produce that unique feeling, and they might want to sift in it and dwell in it because it is compelling to them, because it's the orientation is introverted and deeper. But as an extroverted feeler, I look at that and I'm like, why is that happening? That looks so sad. They need, again, like, I'm saying my gut reaction, not my actual belief here. So I don't believe that that's, like, the truth or a better solution, but it is my impulse. My impulse is to look at something sad, not explore it, but go, like, okay, well, how does it get better? How to not be sad? Sadness, we don't like sadness, fix sadness, or something like that. That's sort of like what I'm noticing about the orientation of these things, and I think that is a lot of why, to bring it back to what I was talking about earlier, that's why I think that FE and FI can both experience deep emotion, but then what do you do with that? Do you go more inside and wonder about it and feel it out, flesh it out with FI, or do you look at it as this information to work with and conclude about and act upon, which is more extroverted feeling? And just like with TE and TI, when there is something that we're wondering about, are we looking at TI, why does that, like, sifting a while and the premises of what would make it correct or not, and just dwelling in it and picking it apart for ourselves, questioning everything, and versus, TE, looking at, okay, like, what literally is the right or wrong answer, let's get to it so we can move on. So anyway, that's sort of my thoughts on all these things. Totally feel free to disagree. I'd love to hear what you guys all think on this, and I'd love to hear your feedback. Yeah, so thank you so much for watching. I'd love to hear if you have anything else to offer on this topic. Yeah, have an awesome day.